Well, hello there and welcome to the candy wallpapered upstairs hallway of the dollhouse for another reading from The Secret Language of Birthdays by Gary Goldschneider and you Stelfers for February 2nd, the day of class. That's right. And here at the top of the page is a visual representational image of the day of class. We have us what appears to be, what is this? Oh, boom, it looks to be a stylized leaf of some sort. I don't know, perhaps what you might find on, some stylized concrete facade, at least a part of it. So, I don't know, it might speak to the day of class to be sure. That's right. Visual representational image aside, I just like you to kind of see what I have in front of me here on the page. It's not altogether all too important in the scheme of things. Now, what is important is it's February 2nd, and hence it's somebody's birthday. So, me wishing you a happy birthday. That's what's important. So happy birthday. If you take nothing else from the video, it's that. Happy birthday. But sometimes these videos find folks late, and if that happens to be the case, I just want to say I hope you had a happy birthday. Now, sometimes folks join us randomly, or they come on in here more ideally to celebrate the birthday, and if that's the case, I just want to say hello, welcome, and I hope you enjoy yourself. Now, before I get into the redirect, and I will, something I like to do around these here parts, and that is roll some dice. This is the DykASSt birthday broadcast, so I like to live up to the namesake, but I do so more importantly for a little thing I like to call a synchronicity. That's right, though I didn't come up with it. Now, what is synchronicity, you're probably wondering? Well, first let's find out what we rolled here. That's right, a 4 and a 2 for a 6. Getting ahead of myself there. What is synchronicity, you probably wondering? Well, my friends, as I hear tell, the universe or the higher powers that be will oftentimes put things in our path to help us realize our goals or manifest our aspirations. But a lot of times as we go through this life, we've got the blinders on, right? We're not necessarily seeing the things for what they are. We might see them, but again, we just let them go by, right? Because we're very laser focused as we get on with our errands, or maybe just like the commute to work, if you like. So this is a little bit of an exercise to help you recognize that the universe or the higher powers that be are with you on your path, and they're putting things down in front of you. But you know what? Since we miss them a lot of the time, we need some way to identify these signs. So what better than a sign we can't help but notice? That's right. Your daily numbers. Now, you don't have to go with the numbers I rolled for you. The intention is there, but it's probably ideal you raid the closet, find that old Yahtzee set, dust it off, and take a couple dice. And I say that because you get out into the world, you need yourself some kind of, a direction to go in. So yeah, ascribe some directional values to number sets and then time limits with which to go in those directions. So once you have all that established, hey, get out to some place near and dear to your heart, or perhaps some place you've never explored before, and then implement this as an experiment. Like I said, to get those blinders off. So once you do that, start taking in everything you see around you like a sponge, because you never know, the day might start to take on a little bit of a theme. You might not necessarily notice your numbers so much as this other thing that presents into your life. Let's take the visual representational image, for example. This stylized leaf. You might start to see it on buildings, or as in design work on advertisements, like on a bus bench, or who's to say on a big old mural on the side of a building, right? Or maybe somebody's carrying a big old piece of what's that stuff called? Spackle, because they're going to go install it in somebody's apartment there. That's right. They're holding a big old plate of it, and it's just got the stylized. I think you get the idea. But it could be just about anything, all right? They just cross your path, so you got to be open to it, all right? But let's say you get on this first leg of your journey here, your first directional value and time limit, and when it comes to an end, hey, maybe you haven't seen anything in particular. You know what? Just don't get dissuaded, all right? At the very least, you're getting your steps in. But once again, kind of compose yourself and start looking around. What do you see? Maybe just so happen to notice, like I often like to say, you're on 6th Avenue, all right? It's your numbers there that come into play. So I would take that as an example. You're on the right path. So roll yourself another directional value, another time limit, and head on out. And you know what? Maybe at the end of this time limit, you find yourself in front of an alleyway. Oh, interesting. Maybe roll yourself a dice, even, odd, for yes or no, and you know what? Maybe yes comes up to go down that alleyway, all right? Extend out questions to the universe, yes, no kinds of things. See what happens, all right? The world is your playground, all right? So you go down that alleyway, and maybe you come to the end of it, and there's a little bit of a leg off of it. What do you notice? Hey, maybe there's some teenagers up there putting up some graffiti. I'm like, hey, can we help you? Oh, no. Hey, I'm just here on synchronicity. They're like, excuse me? Hey, you know what? Show them your dice. Show them this video. And they'll be like, okay, old timer, what, are you really a cop here? You know what? Hey, if you are a cop, let them know. But maybe you're just off duty. Hey, go on, write about it. I'll catch you later if you like. But hey, maybe you just so happen to notice, what's this? Boom, that theme pops up again. Maybe it's incorporated into their artwork, the leaf or whatever it is that comes up. But you know what? Maybe these kids, they want to get out of here because, you know what? Maybe they're done with their work. And maybe it just so happens one of these little hooligans, it's their birthday too. And you know what? Maybe they're done for the day and they just might be apt to join you on your journey, regardless of whether you're a cop. Or maybe that's why they're doing it, because when it comes time for you to catch them again, hey, they want there to be a little bit of a relationship, so you might be a little more apprehensive to put the cuffs on them. That's right. So once again, that's kind of the idea here, letting the dice kind of take the wheel. So what's great about having other people kind of join in on this journey is, as I've also heard told, the universe is apt to provide greater manifestations or better results the more people who are focused on the same thing. So get out there, stack up some coincidences, some synchronicity if you like, and you'll understand why I brought this up. Because everybody, I would argue, wants to see, taste, touch, feel, hear, intuit, maybe smell because of the paint fumes, a little bit of magic. And yeah, it's your birthday, so I can hope that much for you at the very least. So I think you get the idea. Let's get into your birthday read. All right, your month is February, your day is the 2nd, your sign is 12 to 14 degrees Aquarius of the Aquarius II period specifically, and your quality and elements is fixed air. February 2nd, the day of class. Not only are February 2 individuals apt to be polished, sophisticated, and classy, but also likely to embody many of the typical qualities, both the very best and the worst ones, it says in parentheticals, of the social group or nationality from which they spring. Thus, no matter how unusual they are, they tend to stay attached to their cultural upbringing. February 2 people are able to do the impossible and make it look easy. It is because they have great facility with their medium that they can operate in a relaxed fashion. And though they give the impression that such fluency comes naturally, in fact, a great deal of discipline and hard work stands behind it. Classically, those born on this day prefer to work hard in private, not in public. It is extremely important to their image that they remain objective and in complete control of what they are doing. In a word, they are masterful. In February 2 people generally think the best way to avoid problems is to just do things their way. And in fact, however, pushing difficulties away or eschewing any sort of trouble in interpersonal relations can be a subtle form of fascism, the book says, which coerces others to play by February 2 rules or not play at all. Interesting. Cultivating a controlled but easy manner can be just the thing to rid themselves of the bothersome frictions others cause. And indeed, those born on this day seek to make life in general a smooth ride. However, in doing so, they often forget that someone else is on the other end, someone who may have their own ideas about how things should go. Sudden flare-ups, quick but deadly confrontations are not all uncommon when dealing with February 2 people. Below their seemingly placid exterior, they are actually temperamental individuals who do not handle stress very well and, in extreme cases, are not interested in much human contact at all. Many February 2 people enjoy their work or hobby, frequently of a technical nature, above all else. And here they show a most advanced side of their nature, in that it is not so much personal or social, but objective goals that they are striving to reach. On the other hand, if too absorbed in their special interests, they can become careless or oblivious to more mundane concerns. Not uncommonly, they rely on others to take care of these matters so that they don't even have to think about them. Thus, although they live up to their responsibilities on the universal and sometimes on the social level, on the personal level, they may be quite regularly shirking their duties. In February 2, people may get so far into their own world that they have increasingly difficult communicating with those around them, or difficulties, rather. Less highly evolved individuals born on this day who lack the talents but retain the pretension can be difficult and trying. And those more highly evolved remain fresh and inviting, but are also wearing, indeed, on family members and those close friends. They are often frustrated in their desire to share with February 2 people and hunger to become more intimate with them. And those born on this day should thus resist impulses to distance themselves and rather make themselves more available whenever possible. Well, all right. Very interesting breakdown, to be sure. I know I mumble-mouthed a few things in there, but sometimes that happens with these one-shot one-takes. That having been said, I would say this was a somewhat rounded birthday breakdown. And I mention that because in the past few days, actually the past month rather, it has been very hyper-focused on the particular theme of the day, and they don't really venture out of that particular avenue. Yeah, this was somewhat narrowly focused, but they did get into some of the weeds with certain things, in particular as it focused on your personality and the things that you do that kind of make you who you are. And in a lot of cases, they weren't necessarily doing it to that extent. Anyhow, I might be getting ahead of myself. I like to provide a little bit of a commentary here on what we just read, things I find of note, maybe things that connect to days previous, etc. So let's dive into it, all right? And reiterate a lot of the stuff we went over. February 2nd, the day of class. All right, you're apt to be polished, sophisticated, and classy. And the reading is quick to convey the two sides of a cultural spectrum that you may, in fact, embody. The best and the worst, they said. And how you may also be firmly cemented in your path by these qualities. Such otherwise harsh realities being established, you're said to be capable of the impossible and make it look easy, all right, which is said to be due in part to your seeming natural skill with your chosen field of endeavor, but is a perception that you apparently have no problem in perpetuating despite a more dedicated kind of discipline that may go into conceptualizing or producing these works that you're said to be a master at. Which is a quality that I can't be sure I appreciate or find somehow perhaps lacking in humility. Since it kind of comes off like a facade of sorts. I suppose I would have to see it in person and kind of be with the person that's doing it to kind of decide for myself. But this is done, the reading claims, so that the image that you're projecting makes you appear to be one of a master in control of what you are doing, all right? Which on its face, hey, I completely understand, all right? You want to be in control of what you're doing and the image that you're cultivating for folks. But most people don't want to appear incapable or show off their struggles. But to some extent, at least in the way that this is conveyed, it sounds like a bit of an artifice, all right, like a put on. However, if it is in fact done to alleviate yourself of bothersome frictions with others, to make a process easier versus some kind of a deception, all right, to appear a master when you may in fact not be. A master, that is. I don't really see the downside of as much if you're doing it for that particular reason, to make things easier for yourself. Unless perhaps you somehow get pigeonholed or shoehorned into a position where you have to show off your ability to be the master, all right? And if you've been perpetuating this image all along, what are you going to do now? Because you need to have that time alone in order to put out the work that makes you look that way. So that's one of the arguments I have against trying to show off and be somebody you're not, all right? And the reading goes on to say that this does in fact affect others, however. insofar as in a collaborative sense, which I hadn't actually thought about until I reached that in the reading. And I understand it as it was mentioned, because you could basically come in here on a collaborative project and having done everything that was supposed to be part of or done in tandem with somebody else. And they said deadly confrontations can arise from this, apparently. So they must have some example of somebody who did this to draw from, and probably on more than one occasion, I would imagine. So once again, the opposite sides of the spectrum dynamic that was mentioned at the beginning seems to be present and running its course through your life based on what's provided here in the breakdown. To say you're able to achieve objective goals with an absorbed aplomb, but you might not be able to handle the mundane everyday affairs, all right? Or they kind of fall away from your, what do you call it? Your concern, right? There's also living up to universal priorities versus shirking your personal duties. And finally, they mention expanding into your own world, but shirking away from the outside. They also kind of provided a few suggestions on how to further evolve into a better version of yourself. The breakdown provides a nice bit of a rounding out, like I said. Sometimes they don't even give you suggestions on how to improve. But I would say, hey, you know what? This is a little bit of a deviation from the days previous, but it's also definitely a hard look at what we call here kind of a come to God breakdown today, if you like. Because sometimes these things, they're not always going to just be glowing representations of the day, all right? And here they didn't really pull any punches, to be sure. And it was interesting that like the first 3/4 of the breakdown seemed to be a glowing representation, but then they kind of pulled the rug out. And I like when they do this because they surprise me. But I'm sure for someone like you hearing it, especially if the breakdown applies, it might not be the thing you want to hear. So there's that kind of come to God moment there, if you like, which I value because sometimes we need to hear the things we don't necessarily want to hear in order for us to improve or evolve. So, like I said, very interesting breakdown, and I thought it provided a lot of value. At least we're hoping it applies, right? So that said, that's what I had to say about the breakdown. Let's move on to your numbers and your planets. Let's see what else comes up here. We're not done yet by any stretch of the imagination here. Those born on the 2nd of the month are ruled by the number 2 and the moon. And those ruled by the number 2 often make good co-workers as well as partners, rather than leaders. And this quality helps the more detached of February 2 people in their jobs or their relationships. However, the moon's influence can also act as a brake on individual initiative as well as action and produce frustration. And when the moon's effects are combined with Uranus's qualities, which is the ruler of Aquarius, they can produce a highly evolved individual with both unusual and powerful original impulses. However, they can also carry negative traits of eccentricity and a touch of the bizarre. All right, very interesting number and planets entry, and I say that because the top half of it was a total copy-paste job, but then they kind of personalized it there toward the tail end. What else do I have to say here? Oh, I'm getting ahead of myself. Once again, let's dive back into the notes, see what kind of connections we can make. All right, the number 2 in the moon for a dynamic that is classically said to make those falling under this rulership make good partners as well as co-workers rather than leaders. All right, and this one's oftentimes a hard thing for me to justify because sometimes the people on this day, they sound like leaders. All right, but then this moon thing comes up and they say the opposite. I'm like, well, how do I reconcile that? The other thing too is they don't always mention it on the day, and sometimes it's on days where it seems like it would apply. Here, I would say today it didn't really seem like it would apply. Doesn't mean it doesn't, but the person that they kind of summarized here in the breakdown, I would say seemed very self-conscious, or not necessarily self-conscious, but self-oriented, if you like. And the only time they brought up a partner was when you were maybe doing something against them or keeping them out of the joint effort there. So it's interesting they say you work well with others here. To this end, they do clarify this helps those who are more detached, but I still find it odd that it's been included, as it didn't seem the case. With that in mind, the moon's influence as a brake on personal initiative is also often mentioned, so I feel as though this is largely a copy paste job here at the top. And it's kind of hastily tailored to fit because it doesn't seem like it applies. I could be wrong, but that's just my gut feeling there. They do go down to relate, or they do go on rather, to relate that Uranus, with its explosive and erratic energies, can produce highly evolved individuals, powerful, original impulses, and that is, by and large, a fairly novel, original inclusion, if I can remember anything there. But the negatives are typical traits, all right? And I'm more apt to think that Uranus's influence on the moon is what causes this duality schism that we were running into in the breakdown between the polarities of the moon influences. Because I feel like it was an opposite kind of day. The things mentioned of the moon, it felt like it was more opposite than anything. But that's just my take, and I'm certainly not an astrologer, so just take what I have to say with a grain of salt, season to taste if you like, but maybe it's something to consider. All right, if you're not being a what do you call a good coworker or a partner, and you're said here to be somebody who would be better at that than a leader, maybe that's something to reflect upon. And you know what? Another thing they didn't mention about the moon is said to be highly reflective or help with those particular powers. So don't be afraid to do a little self reflection to better improve yourself, I would say, because there's nothing wrong with trying to do that. But sometimes, just like the breakdown didn't pull any punches, you got to be hard on yourself, I would say. All right? See, or reflect on the things you may not want to. So with that said, that has been your numbers and your planets. Let's move on to your tarot. That's right, one of the more eclectic of the New Age metaphysical ideologies. But hey, we don't have to take it home with us. Start dealing out the cards to inspire our every whim and flight of fancy, or predict our future, however they're used. So let's see what it has to say, and then we can leave it in a book. Sometimes we can take some more context or interesting things of note. Sometimes it lines up with the breakdown, other times it doesn't. So let's dive in and see. The second card of the major arcana is the Priestess, shown seated on her throne, calm and impenetrable. She is a spiritual woman who reveals hidden forces and secrets, and empowering those who heed her with that knowledge. Favorable qualities of the card are silence, intuition, reserve, and discretion. Negative traits are secretiveness, mistrust, and inertia. All right. Very interesting. Even though this was a total copy-paste job, nothing novel to be included. I don't say that with any kind of judgment, because that's often the case. They usually carry that forward to no certain extent, if that's even said right. But what do I say? Usually when they personalize the numbers and planets to some extent, the tarot definitely doesn't really get any kind of focus. Not all the time, but oftentimes. So it's not an anomaly in that regard, is what I'm trying to say. But let's dive in, see if I can throw something at it for you, apply a little bit more value to it for you. The Priestess, the spiritual woman who reveals hidden truths and empowers those who heed her knowledge, all right? Which on its face, I'd say, is a bit contrary to your nature if we go by the breakdown, all right? Because you seem to be more self-oriented, I would argue. But going by this dynamic that has been mentioned the past few days, it's a new dynamic that's popped up where it's not necessarily the individual that takes on the particular traits, but it's said that the traits mentioned in the card affect the individual. Then this might apply, all right? And that's something that just came up the other day. A whole new way of looking at the tarot card, very interestingly. The card can, in such cases, serve as an example of how the individual should try to act or to realize their higher self evolution, all right? Kind of a cop-out in my mind. We're taking on the things, trying to tailor it to fit. But I don't know. Like, again, it's something that we can reflect upon, all right? And see here. If the breakdown applies, you may put on a facade and keep things to yourself and to detrimental ends, perhaps. And that said, I'd argue it's a fair suggestion that we try to, what do you call here? Reveal hidden secrets to others. You know, that may not be something you want to do, but hey, you know what? It might help you in the long run find some other form of yourself. It's things that work that you wouldn't have thought would work. Besides that, I'd say the positives and negatives, they do line up in a pretty dramatic fashion, ironically, because the first part of the card didn't seem to. And besides that, I'd say that the positive names, like I said, line up. Again, there's kind of a polar schism happening, and it is what's interesting. I noticed it seems to be happening in the writing as well. They're pulling these different dynamics, things that work, things that don't work, and it's a little bit ironic that with the breakdown being what it was, things that work, things that don't work, the writing's kind of following that theme also. I've seen this happen a few other times also, but maybe not to this dramatic of an extent. So a little disjointed there because I went off on a tangent, lost my place in the notes. But hey, you know what? I think we pulled it together, put some value into it, things to consider. So with that said, let's move on to your health. All right, your health. As they get older, those born on February 2 can display a wide variety of physical complaints, most chronic rather than acute. And not all of these have a firm physical basis, however, since those born on this day tend to be a bit hypochondriacal, it says. I might be pronouncing that wrong. Real physical difficulties often arise with the lungs and the circulatory system, particularly in the extremities. And the lungs is a new one there. These true concerns may be precisely the ones they ignore. Interesting. Perversely, they may ignore them perversely though. And so regular checkups with a family physician are necessary. And those born on this day can well be in need of guidance where food is concerned, as they may not be fond of eating what is best for them. Often their tastes run into more sophisticated and unfortunately unrealistic in terms of the pocketbook, and they may wish to serve or be served in a highly aesthetic fashion. And all this has been said in parentheticals here. Regular but moderate physical exercise here is recommended. All right. Very interesting health entry today. Very specific, tailored to fit to a T, I would say. Nothing really repeated, though there were a few things. But let's get into it. Probably getting ahead of myself again. Wide variety of physical complaints to say chronic versus acute as you get older. But you may be a bit of a hypochondriac, the reading claims, and real issues may be those that you ignore. For more of that ironic theme, that schism there we were talking about. Guidance for diet recommendations, but there's no real suggestions here for specific foods, and that's a bit of an anomaly. A lot of times they'll drill down on foods that are good for you for your particular period. And I say that because, or not because, but here's what the foods are that are recommended for the Aquarius. The Aquarius body areas are the circulatory system and the lower legs and the ankles. They mentioned lungs for you. I don't have an opinion on that because that's a new inclusion. But that said, they often recommend cutting out red meat to take care of your heart there, I would say. And the Capricorn period, which came before you, they had very striking similarities. They had the veins and the skeleton. And they were often recommended to cut out cholesterol because, animal fats and dairy fats can contribute to clogged arteries and such. So maybe take that under consideration as well. And the veins for you oftentimes translates into being aware of embolism or stroke. And since the lower legs and the ankles is another Aquarius body area, I've been apt to suggest get yourself some compression socks, all right? Head it off at the pass. Don't just wait till you're older. You also don't want no varicose veins, I don't imagine. So especially if you want to wear them Bermuda shorts in the summertime. So yeah, head it off at the pass. But no real suggestions in the health entry for diet to be concerned there, outside of watching your dollar there. If you want to live that high-end life, you're apt to lose some money in the affair, it sounds like. Comically, another schism, I said, in the writing, but insofar as they didn't relate to things they typically do. But regular and moderate exercise is recommended. No context here as to why. Moon days are often a little more reserved. There's no real aggressive natures kind of baked into it. But Uranus is a planet said to shake up and electrify the planet that it co-rules. And so maybe that's why they're kind of drilling down on the moderate exercise there. Like, do you take a Mars day, somebody who's very aggressive, got that God of War energy, their exercise recommendation is usually aggressive or competitive, so that ostensibly so they can excise those aggressive powers there. So that's kind of why I bring in the planets, because that seems to be the association. So here with the moon being a rather passive planet, a lot of times I would say that the exercise, it's not really said to be something you need to focus on too strenuously. And here they said moderate and regular. Again, I might be drilling down on something a bit redundant because that's a pretty general idea. But sometimes people, they aren't even recommended exercise. So anyway, that's why I mentioned that. That said, that's what I'd say about your health. I covered the diet, the body areas. So let's move on to some advice. That's right. You get some more advice there. Be more aware of yourself and the figure you cut, and keep in tune with the language of others, and retain humility and a sense of your roots. All right, real quick and to the point, but I think they provided a lot of specific value. The past few days, it's been a little bit, it seems like it hasn't applied. I've had to really do my homework and reach into it to try to append to make the advice work. Or read between the lines, if you like. So what I have to say here, be more aware of yourself and the figure you cut, they said. I said, based on the breakdown, you're a unique individual, but there's a disconnect that you may or may not be aware of, especially if you desire to improve upon or change it. And understanding your nature, that might not be something you want to do. And how you relate to others is a key to that, to finding that higher gear, that higher evolution. And so rally that objectivity that you're said to possess and that you use rather selectively, but expand upon it, I would say. All right. So they said, be more aware of yourself and the figure you cut. Be reflective. Use those moon powers. All right. And then ask the objective, hard-hitting questions of yourself. They said, keep in tune with the language of others. And I'd say that's right in line with the figure you cut, but with a focus on how you relate to others specifically, as it may be something of a blind spot for you there, something you don't lend much consideration, even when you're trying to improve yourself. That's right. So ask others what they think, or just listen to what they have to say in instances where you would otherwise maybe ignore what they have to say, because you're too focused on yourself ostensibly, at least based on the breakdown, right? What else do they say? Retain humility and a sense of your roots, all right? You don't have to sell being the unerring master, okay? Admitting something was difficult doesn't lessen the value of the work, I would argue. And it kind of deflates the air of pretension, all right? Making you seem more like a person, and hence you're more accessible in those regards. Remembering your roots is also something that humbles you. Makes you remember back to the time when things were hard ostensibly, or things were more difficult. And sometimes people like to hear that kind of thing. So leaning in on someone you aren't necessarily is phoniness. That's right. I'm sure it serves to kind of impress the rich and the well-to-do, the elitists, if you like. Or maybe it doesn't, but hey, they let you in the wine parties and such. That's the only real value I can take from perpetuating the facade. And one might argue there's no real value to that at all, outside of making elitist friends and maybe taking some money in the bargain. Who's to say? But you know what? Pick the things you ascribe value, I suppose. But it's not a good look, this phoniness, I would say. And probably to the people who share your roots either. Besides, the people don't respect you coming from humble beginnings. They're probably not the folks that you should have in your circle anyway. If they find out you came from humble beginnings, and they're going to judge you based on that, not the work you put out. Why do you want to be around these folks, right? That'd be my question. They probably have their own issues that they're not working on either. They're not very highly evolved despite the amount of money in their coffers, right? And do you want to be around those folks? I don't know. Those are the hard questions you have to ask yourself. No judgment, regardless of which way you land on it. But in any event, that's what I had to say about your advice. Hopefully you took some value from it. I know they're hard questions, and they probably lean into making you sound like I don't know what we call it, I can't think of the word, but someone who's just self-consumed, all right, only concerned about themselves. But I don't know. That might just be because the breakdown led at that place. But in any event, hey, I'm there for people finding their higher evolved state for sure. So yeah, look at it from those perspectives, and we all need to improve, don't we? That's right. I would argue. And if that's your advice, so let's move on to your meditation. That's right. It's your birthday. You get a meditation. The simplest tastes are often the most elegant. All right. Very interesting. I like this one for you. It just occurred to me what I think it means. All right. The simplest tastes are often the most elegant. All right. Like I said, I like this one for you. But I'm not going to tell you what I think it means. It's your birthday. It's your meditation. If I were to break it down for you, that would change what it might mean to you. That's right. And then it would be devoid of all value. That's right. But based on the breakdown, I think you could probably figure it out pretty easily. Do some of that moon-powered reflection if you like. That said, your meditation in a can, as it were, let's move on to your strengths and your weaknesses. That's right. Let's lean into that objectivity they mentioned for you and hold up the objective mirror and see where we got the bulk there, if you like, and when we're otherwise atrophied. Yeah, your strengths and your weaknesses. Your strengths, you're sophisticated, you're dynamic, you're original. All right. I like that. I like that. Though some of them, I don't know, I would say kind of similar in some respect. But hey, I'm not trying to poo-poo it. Those are great. I like them. But your weaknesses, oh, let's hold up that objective mirror again. Flip it to the side. That blows up your face. Shows off the things you might be otherwise superficially insecure about there within the metaphor, if you like. Or literally, who's to say? But your weaknesses. All right. You're insulated. You're aloof or indifferent, if you like, and dispassionate, they said. Oh, not influenced by emotion and able to be rational and impartial. Well, I had to look it up. I wanted to be sure what it meant. Very interesting. Very interesting. I say that because a lot of times these strengths and weaknesses, they trade back and forth depending on the day and the individual. I saw impulsive one day a strength and the very next day a weakness. So it got me thinking, hey, you know what? Who's to say that our weaknesses aren't strengths depending upon the situation, not just the individual? And a lot of times, hey, if we want to improve our weaknesses, it got me thinking maybe there's an argument to be had that our strengths are going to help us do it. You're sophisticated, dynamic, and original. Hey, if you want to improve upon being insulated, aloof, and dispassionate, you know what? You're going to cook up some highly inventive, original, dynamic way of doing so. And sophisticated means of doing it, perhaps. I don't know. Maybe you bring in individuals, that's right, to help you do as much. That's a dynamic thing, because if you were static, you wouldn't be trying it. That's right. But your weaknesses, how can we see these as strengths? Insulated, aloof, dispassionate. If you insulate yourself, you're definitely taking out any kind of chance or risk that somebody else is going to mess up or muck up your work. I'd see that as a strength, though some would probably argue against that. Aloof, indifference. You know what? Sometimes if we take things on too personally or too to heart, it's going to affect us emotionally, right? And then that's going to affect the work. So if you can be indifferent to things, that's a strength. I think they mention it as weakness because you might just be doing all of these things a little too much, all right? So balance and moderation is always a persistent theme throughout the birthday breakdowns there. Dispassionate, you know, it said that you're not influenced by emotion. Again, in some circumstances, that can be a strength for sure. Some folks are too emotional, all right, and they let that color everything they do. And so the recommendation for them, hey, be a little more rational, okay? So, hey, if we're rational about things, boom, we're going to help figure those things out. Especially, but, you know, if you're too rational, you're taking the human element out of things, and people are going to see you as someone who's rather cold, I would argue. So, yeah, that said, you know what? Our weaknesses, we can improve upon them as much as we like, but I would argue also not to get rid of them altogether because they make us who we are. All right, those are your strengths and weaknesses. So let's move on to those born on this day. And when we get into those born on this day, something I like to do, not only see who shares your company, but see what they did to get in the book and maybe take some inspiration for that to focus in on something I find important, and that is chasing after our passions or figuring them out. Because I meet a lot of individuals out in the world and ask them what they do, and more importantly, if they like it, and they don't. And I think it's huge if we're getting out of bed each morning, each day, doing backflips, eager to get into our day, because we're finding something personally fulfilling. We have a purpose, right? But like I said, it takes, or maybe I didn't say it, it often takes work and determination and time, more importantly, to figure those things out and drill down on them. And sometimes even if we have a passion, hey, maybe we don't know how to make them financially viable, so they take a back seat to the corporate job we have, the thing that does bring in money, because hey, we're used to it, it's simple, we can roll out of bed, punch the clock, maybe even don't have to do much work because we're at a certain place in our life where the other people are doing it, so it's just kind of on autopilot. But hey, do you get any personal fulfillment from that? I don't know. It's a hard question to ask. Would you be getting more fulfillment if you were chasing after something that you find purpose in and fulfillment? Maybe so. So this is the focus I like to take with this. Let's maybe drum up some inspiration from those who share our birthday. At the very least, maybe me putting the bug in your ear about it help you ask some more hard-hitting questions. All right, let's get into it here. We start off with James Joyce, the Irish expatriate poet, short story writer, and novelist of Ulysses, who perfected the stream of consciousness literary technique. We also have Jascha Heifetz, a Russian violinist, Fritz Kressler, a Viennese violinist and a composer, Stan Getz, a jazz tenor, saxophonist. We also have Sonny Stitt, a jazz tenor, saxophonist. We also have Charles Maurice de Talleyrand's Perigord. I'm surprised I got that right. French bishop, a statesman, Napoleon's foreign minister, and also an ambassador to Britain. We also have Ayn Rand, the novelist of Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged fame, Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, a French president, Garth Brooks, country western singer, first 3 albums sold 15 million, it says. Havelock Ellis, a British psychologist and writer on fetishes and sexual deviations. I think that's right, deviations. The Psychology of Sex was what they're famous for. A book, I'm assuming. We also have Graham Nash, the British singer and songwriter of Crosby, Stills, and Nash fame. Farrah Fawcett, the TV actress of Charlie's Angels and also a cosmetics model. Nell Gwynn, a British 17th century stage actress who started as a fruit seller and witty favorite of Charles II. Hey, they talked about her roots there. How about that? Elaine Stritch, a singing comedian, a Broadway star, it also says. James Dickey, the novelist and the screenwriter. Jussi Björling, a Swedish opera tenor. Probably saying that one wrong. We also have Vera Chytilova, a Czech film director of Daisies fame. Also have Abba Eban, an Israeli UN representative. Tom Smothers from the TV comedian of the Smothers Brothers troupe fame there, the brothers rather. And then Huguette Bertrand, a French painter. All right, hey, I know I butchered a few names there, so let's make up for it on my side of things. It's not done in malice, it's just hooked on phonics. Doesn't often work for me with the names, especially if they're foreign or have a little bit of an Eastern twang to them there, if you like. That having been said, I know it's a big ask, tall order, to take inspiration from other people's accomplishments. But like I said, hopefully, me just putting the bug in your ear about it help you stir up the fires, all right? Because if there's anything I can wish you on your birthday, it's that you're chasing after a passion, finding something that is fulfilling in your life. All right, so that essentially rounds out your birthday read. That's right, having related those born on this day. Except to say your season is winter, your sign once again is Aquarius, of the Aquarius II period specifically, and your quality and elements is fixed air. And this has been The Secret Language of Birthdays by Gary Goldschneider and Just Elfers. I have an affiliate link in the description down above, a personal message that I leave for all the birthday boys and girls there if you like. So hey, if you're interested in picking up a copy, click on that. So save the hassle of having to type it in a browser and support the channel in the bargain, which I appreciate. With that having been said, not altogether all too important with the birthday book there. What is important though, like I said at the top, wishing you a happy birthday. All right, so once again, happy birthday. And for everybody else who joined us, hey, I hope you enjoyed yourselves, took something to note, something of interest, and you join us for your birthday read. But lest I forget, that's right, your daily numbers. All right, I know it's kind of a hard ask, tall order for some folks to put themselves out there and do such things. But hey, if you just so happen to see a little bit of the magic out there, see, taste, touch, and smell it, intuit a little bit of it, see some numbers, see some coincidences, hey, you know what? I think you'll see why I brought it up. Because if there's anything I wish for you on your birthday, in addition to everything else, it's that you're out there getting your steps in, avoiding the strokes, but also seeing something special. And you know what? Finding your goals and aspirations. That's right. Once again, happy birthday. I want to thank you for the pleasure of your time and the privilege of sharing your birthday with you. I do enjoy doing these things for folks, even though it takes a lot of work doing the notes and such, but I get a lot of fulfillment out of it. So I hope you did too. All right, take care of yourselves, and you know what? Do the hard work. Ask the hard-hitting questions, all right? It's huge, all right? Once again, happy birthday, and take care of yourselves.